Please welcome Bill Halliden and David Sherburne.
Thank you. Welcome, Bill, to this worldwide virtual event. I'm pleased to sit down with you today and excited to learn about digital transformation at Toyota.
Yeah, so thanks very much for having me here, David. I'm really looking forward to the event and sitting down and having a chat with you.
All right, well, let's jump in. So we both know that digital transformation is much larger than Toyota. So can you fill us in on what's going on in the European Union?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot actually happening at the moment. So on the 9th of March, the EU Commission actually they just basically announced their digitalization strategy and targets for 2030. So the Commission now is really focused on kind of four key pillars, which are skills, infrastructure, and business digital transformation, and then also digitalization of public services. So maybe diving a bit more into detail of each of those. So on the skills area, they're wanting to train 20,000 or 20 million new ICT specialists. So this is going to be important for us for our pipeline of engineers coming in the future. And then they're targeting to train 80 million people then with basic IT skills. So of course, this is going to be important for us for our future pipeline of products and for the future customers. Then the second pillar on that side is infrastructure. So there's a big push now also from the European Commission then on connectivity. So they're really pushing 5G everywhere. Then they're also focused on more cutting edge semiconductors. So of course this is the reaction to the dominance in Asia. And then thirdly, they're wanting to ramp up then not only on cloud but on edge. So they're targeting, I think, 10,000 edge nodes. And then finally, of course, they're wanting to take a lead then in quantum computing. So they're wanting to have the first quantum computer by 2025. So of course, for us in Toyota, these are points that we're going to be monitoring closely, and they're going to be impacting or potentially impacting our future products and services. So I think then the third pillar that's being focused on then is business digital transformation. So they're really focused on now getting tech into startup companies, like the usual AI, big data, on cloud. But then they're also trying to increase, double actually the number of unicorns in Europe. So maybe some people will have seen in the press, we announced recently that we are going to be partnering more. We're going to be leveraging partnerships with tech startups. So that's certainly going to be something we're going to be monitoring. And then on the public digital services, that's an interesting one. They want to have all key public services 100% digital, and they're wanting to have 100% electronic medical records. So for us, that's also quite interesting because in January 2020, we announced quite an ambitious project called Woven City at the base of Mount Fuji in Japan, where we're going to build basically a prototype city of the future. And this is really quite an ambitious and visionary project where we're wanting to basically test out new technology, so automated driving, connectivity, mobility, but really putting businesses and entrepreneurs and researchers together to really test those in a real world condition. So we'll be really looking at the intersection of mobility, city, infrastructure, and the public. So what's happening also then at a European level is maybe linking in with that. So that's something we're also going to be monitoring. So I think, David, to kind of wrap up on this point from an EU perspective, the EU is first of all looking at skills. Secondly, they're looking at infrastructure. Thirdly, they're looking at data. And fourth, they're looking at digitalization of public services.
Yeah, the woven city is a really interesting concept, and the businesses and the people that will be included in that will get a lot of benefit out of it. And it's going to be interesting to see how people kind of react to all these changes that you
Yeah.
just kind of went through. So these are truly exciting and dynamic times, and it's good to see the European governments as well as Toyota out in front of this and meeting it head on. So now that you've clarified kind of the EU's transformation vision, what does digital transformation mean for Toyota Motor Company?
Yeah, so for us now, we've updated our mission and vision. So our mission is to bring happiness to all, and the vision is to bring mobility for all. And this is now encapsulated within what we call the Toyota philosophy cone. And then one of the key areas also within that what we're talking about, software first strategy. So that's really taking into account the inherent differences on the product life cycle between hardware and software. So traditionally on a product development, software is generally faster. But we've been in the past basically coupling both of those together and doing the hardware and software together. So now actually moving forward, we're going to decouple those and basically we'll have those decoupled from a software and hardware point of view. So, of course, this is focused in on software for our customers. So, what my role then is really is digitalization of the engineering processes here in Europe, really from concept to all the way until mass production. Um, so for me, my role here is really targeting to bring happiness to our European engineers, and then as an end result, basically bring happiness to our customers. So I think, kind of, David, to wrap up on this point now, we'll continue to bring happiness for all by decoupling hardware and software development cycles to develop ever better products. And additionally, we'll produce happiness for our European engineers and build really a seamless digital thread all the way from concept until mass production.
Yeah, evolving automobiles and mobility solutions just kind of gives you the feel for what kind of massive change is coming to product
Yeah.
development organizations. So keeping your people happy in this time is a really important thing. So, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit here. I think the realities of a global pandemic have touched all of us in some way or another, and it's been a difficult time for many people and many of us. So, can you talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted your digital transformation?
Yeah, sure. So before COVID, we were mainly office based with occasional working from home. But then in the past number of years, we've been putting a lot of investments into enable an infrastructure that can handle a distributed engineering team, basically able to work remotely. So we're Belgium based. So when we had the lockdown on the 18th of March 2020, actually we had everything in place. So we're actually able to move very agilely from 100 basically office based to 100% remote. Remote with actually very little interruption on the daily engineering jobs, which was actually quite impressive. So this, of course, was enabled by the IT investments and, of course, our very capable IT team. But also, this was an opportunity then for all our engineering teams, where they really basically seized that opportunity to look at basically new ways of working. And this was a point that I think Peter raised at his keynote just before this, was basically that there is no readiness planning for extreme events, and agility matters. And I think for me, I tend to actually agree with that, and that's what I experienced with the engineering teams in 2020. So the engineers all really worked as a one team. Change was celebrated. Creativity was increased. People were willing to take more calculated risks and actually jump into things. And I think also the remote working allowed more the preconceptions of the engineering office to be removed, and the engineers were able to look at their job, the process system from kind of a new frame of reference, which was able to help us with the agility for change. So I think that the key message here was that from a COVID standpoint, we already had plans and investments in place to enable large scale remote working. The engineers, most importantly, then seized that opportunity to pull forward many initiatives, and that really helped us to navigate in an agile and confident manner.
Yeah, it really does show the value of a continuous improvement philosophy that's ongoing. It seems like you're able to leverage that pretty significantly during this time to kind of help out your people and your business. Doesn't seem like you missed a beat. So, Bill, I'm sure digital transformation has had some challenging times at Toyota as well. So which have been your most significant challenges with respect to your digital transformation journey?
Yeah, so I tend to kind of break my digital transformation down into kind of three pillars. So people, process, and basically and tools. And when I speak to my network outside of Toyota, and then what I read in the literatures, um, a lot of transformation leaders are focusing, say, 80% of their time on the tool, and maybe then 20% of the time on people and process. And when I reflect, actually, I see myself as being the opposite. I'm 80% of my time on people and process, and 20% on the tool. And that's maybe something I shouldn't be saying at an ACE conference, but anyway, that's the reality. So, but I think what's important here is by focusing the energy on training the members and focusing on the process, we're able to really maximize the ROI that we actually get from the tools. So it's taking the engineers along on a journey. They're able to better understand the process, the problems, and then what the tool can do. And from that perspective, then we're not trying to basically recreate the functionality that's already in an Excel file. We're able to find new value areas. And I think also from a tool point of view, the important areas here is that the agility is built into the tools. So what's the constant of digital transformation? The constant is change, and that's the famous old cliche. But the tools need to be able to change at the speed you need them to change from an organizational standpoint. So the tool cannot put you in chains and inhibit that. So for me, that's a key selection criteria on any new tools that we're looking at. So I think, kind of, David, to conclude on this point now, the three basically pillars are people, process, and tool, and I spend around 80% of my time on people and process.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Bill. It's just amazing how many times I've seen companies just put the technology first and forget about the people in the process, and then it just turns out to be a pretty good sized mess. So it's nice to see you putting the people and the processes first and continuous improvement, and that's going to pay huge dividends as this digital transformation moves forward for Toyota. So you mentioned the three pillars. Can you explain more about the three pillars of digital transformation?
Yeah, sure. So maybe first of all, on process is that so one of the core competencies of Toyota is the Toyota Production System, so TPS. I think most people know, and the principle of that is really to manufacture in the most efficient manner. So one of the principles of the Toyota Production System is muda, which is basically the Japanese word for waste. And what we're doing now is we're bringing these TPS principles from manufacturing into basically our development process. So we're really focused on eliminating as much waste as possible within the engineering processes to have them as lean as possible, and only then think about what is the automation potentials we're putting a tool on there. I think then another area which we're focused on then is from Toyota. We've historically been very strong on Kaizen, which again is the Japanese word for continuous improvement. And again, that also started in manufacturing. So over a large number of years, that of course has spread right through whole corporate Toyota. But within the engineering areas, that's maybe being focused on our functional areas, so like body design, chassis, electronics. So one of my key focus areas now on the process side has been basically the horizontal process improvement. So really trying to connect the engineers and functions together to look at defining a common problem and a common countermeasure that can basically develop a win-win. And then basically that there really is a real level up on benefit on the process Kaizen there. So I think, yeah, really to wrap up on this point, we're focused on leveraging the roots and power of Toyota Production System and taking that principle of MUDA and carrying that over into the development area to really make the processes as lean as possible and making sure then we have a strong foundation in place for the next phase in the digital transformation.
Yeah, as a leader in lean philosophy, with Toyota following this path, totally makes sense. And I've learned a lot from Toyota over the years. I mean, we implemented Eris at a medical device company, and we really tried to lean out the processes as we went along. And the Toyota system was a very helpful for me at that time. So this kind of conversation is kind of full circle for me. And it's nice to see, Toyota actually taking these concepts and then moving into the next generation of product development. It's really exciting because we both know that change is always coming, and finding ways
Absolutely.
to get rid of it is a lifelong process, right?
Exactly.
So
I like lifelong journey. Exactly.
So can you spend a little bit of time talking to us also about the next pillar, which is the role of people with the audience?
Yeah. So on the people front, I think personally for me that this is the most important, of course, the most challenging and also the most rewarding. So again, going back to what kind of Peter mentioned at his keynote speeches, he talked about the concept of the chess master and it not being a viable option. And yeah, I actually do tend to agree with that because if we look back at historically on the automotive sector in the past 10 or 20 years, it's been a very stable, predictable environment. So you could have that chess master there who's evaluating all the strategic opportunities and risks and then deciding the suitable play. But in the current environment of constant change, with with many other different variables at play, which are leading to multiple different future scenarios, I don't think also this is really a viable option. So what I'm really focused on then is looking at basically a top-down and bottom-up approach. And what I'm looking at on a top-down approach is really creating an ambitious long-term vision on our digital transformation, on where we want to be. And then as a bottom-up initiative, then it's really working with the engineers, having a framework in place that we can develop new ways of working that can support our digital transformation towards that long-term vision. So I think within the Toyota way, we've got two pillars. So one is continuous improvement, and two is basically respect for people, and they're really at the heart of everything we do. So Toyota has an expectation to all of us that we're constantly personally improving ourselves, but then also improving the process. But then in order to do that, we need to have mutual respect of each other. So for me as a leader for both of these pillars, I'm focused on two key points. So one is on networking, and the second is on empowerment. So firstly, on networking, I'm really spending on a daily basis hunting down new opportunities for process Kaizen. Then secondly, my network is also coming to me with proposals and opportunities for process Kaizen. And within this, they need to have a mutual respect for me that we're going to work together on this and we're going to have a win-win. And it's really, we have kind of an unwritten contract that if we're going to work together on this, we're going to mutually respect each other and we're going to continuously improve to basically improve the process or the situation. And only when you have both of those together do you really do you make that incremental, constant step forward? And then the second point then is on empowerment. So we have a hugely talented engineering team within Toyota with fantastic creative ideas. And my role is really to have a framework in place which supports them achieving their process Kaizen goals, which is also in line with our long-term goals. So I think to conclude on here, the Toyota way is really based from a people perspective, is based on continuous improvement and then respect for people. And then I'm really using these guiding principles then to empower the engineers towards our long-term digitalization vision.
Yeah, respected and empowered people alongside of continuous improvement is immensely powerful concepts in organizational change management. So that's your 80% people and process and 20% tools. I think you've got that really well covered. Because I've seen autocratic organizations just not do really well when they try to change the culture because people aren't engaged and they don't feel empowered, and those are just two concepts that really help people along that change curve. And building it up front, building your system up front, and reinforcing it, are going to lead to the successful, TPS 2.0, so to speak. So let's finally get to that final pillar, which has got to do with tools. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about the role of tools?
Yeah. So as I said before, I'm spending about 20% of my time on the tools, and if we get the first two pillars right on process and people, actually the tools is generally the easy part. But often, if we're struggling with the implementation of the tools, the root cause, a large percentage of time is related to people or to process. So I think that's also what we've discussed is also the adaptability of the tool, and for me that's where I've been certainly focused on. Then is to be able to match that tool adaptability with the organizational speed. So it can't be too fast, it can't be too slow. So I think that's what we saw some of the key merits of basically Innovator, and then working with the Agile team with Aris, is that we were able to tune that speed based on the needs that we had. So over the past 2 years, we've done POCs, we've done development projects, and we've been able to really maximize the speed that's necessary at the time. Sometimes we've had to go fast, sometimes we've had to go maybe less fast, but that's helped us then to really basically step by step build up the engagement with the engineers. So if we're running too fast, the engagement isn't there by the engineers, so we need to be able to go at that appropriate speed to get that buy-in, where we can then really maximize the ROI from the tools. So I think the key point here to wrap up on this is that I tend not to go into any software development until we've basically got the two key pillars of process and people fixed as a foundational basis, and only when they're in place then do we start to really do some investments in software development and implementation.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because we both know that tools can enable both good behaviors and bad behaviors for the organization. So having the good behaviors up front is really important. But you did touch on a key point with Aris. I've had 10 years experience with Aris Innovator as well, and I found it to be a very flexible platform, and its ease of configuration and simplicity to actually configure really helped us do multiple releases per year, because we did like 3 or 4 releases per year. Kind of once we got the processes and the input from the people. We would do updates every quarter to kind of continuously improve the solution. And that allowed us to add new modules and make people happy, so to speak, and I think the terms of Toyota. And I think that was really helpful, and Aris was very good with that, as far as being able to do that in an efficient manner. So we did 3 or 4 releases a year and about an upgrade every 12 to 18 months. So as a follow-up question, kind of how many releases does Toyota do a year as part of your transformation project?
Yeah, so well, in my area now, of course, it depends on the number of projects, mobility projects we've got going on a specific year. But typically, we're doing a 3 week sprint. So then we could have anywhere between 10 to 12 releases per year.
Yeah, that's amazing. It probably isn't amazing for any software engineers that are here, but when you think about enterprise IT system, and you think about all the processes and training and everything that goes on with them, being able to do that many releases of a year in a year is a pretty major feat for an IT department, and an enterprise tool. So that's great. It's good to hear. So you did mention earlier in the conversation that Innovator was deployed as a proof of concept in support of engineering data management, and you said you actually moved that into production. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it took about a year to really move from POC to production on Innovator, and then the goal of our engineering data management pilots was really to capture and connect all our engineering data in a tool independent manner. So for us, data management is very important foundation for us. So Toyota is a global company. We've got R&D research centers all over the world, and we've got common requirements. We've got specific requirements for different tool chains, which can handle tools, models, and servers. So a tool chain in Toyota terms, what we call is basically a process taking data and doing a simulation and getting some engineering result, and that's all the tools, software tools, and simulation tools that we need. So for us, it's very important to be able to manage the data backbone related to those tool chains. And then going back to what I talked about before about the only constant in digital transformation is change, is that now it's the same, it's continuing on with CASE. So I think everybody knows CASE, connected, autonomous, shared, and electrification, is that we're constantly developing basically new tools, new models, new solvers to basically solve our future problem. But therefore, in order to manage that, we need to basically have a data management solution that's independent from the tools, the model, and the solvers that we're using. So this really makes us future-proof for data management, where we're able to maintain our agility for changes in the future. So I think what kind of our key point here is, and what we're focused on, is that first of all, the future is constantly changing. Data is the only constant, and our engineering tools, solvers, and models are also constantly changing. So we want to make sure that we've got a solid data management foundation to ensure resilience for the future.
Yeah, those are great points. And I typically would divide the space into inspirational tools, operational tools like PLM, and then transactional tools like ERP. And for me, it helped kind of separate the space to the point where you can actually use the best in class tools in the inspirational areas,
Yep.
and then have very lightweight processes. And then in the PLM or the operational area, begin to structure that data so it can be made transactional, at the right time. So that kind of helped me mentally break up the space and
Yeah.
and helped us address that space in a continuously changing manner. Because, like you said, things change
Yep.
at different paces in those
Yep.
spaces. So having some mental separation is really important. So you did talk about some challenges earlier on. Can you talk a little bit about how you address those challenges in the engineering data management project?
Yeah, so again, as we said, we took our own advice, and we focused on the process and people first of all. But I think on the process point of view, then we set up an internal Toyota team, then applying basically TPS on the process to really make sure we had a lean a lean standardized process. And then we started, once the process was fixed in, we started to look at then, okay, who are the right people in order to set up basically the agile team. So here we had a combination of, we had RS people, we had NCA people, and then we had internal product managers, BAs and stuff, then work directly with the development members to really bring the project into production. So I think with regards to the tools, then we found the configuration of Innovator, the data model, very flexible. And then a large percentage of the development then is actually focused on the GUI. So we did a lot of customization on the GUI to really make sure we had a nice UX for basically the engineers, because that's linking back to again our mission and my mission of bringing happiness to our European engineers. We're now trying to also focus on that they've got a good user experience internally, and most importantly, then they're getting the benefits of what they're wanting from the user requirements that they put in at the start of the project. So I think for us here again, the challenges were again focusing on, do we have we got a good process? Are the horizontal upstream and downstream stakeholders, are they speaking to each other? Do we have some common problems that we recognize? Do we talk through those? Do we find common solutions? And then have we broken that down into the most leanest horizontal process we can get? And then let's look at then getting the right people from those upstream stakeholders, from the people that are running the process, from the downstream ones. Can we connect those then as product managers, as BAs, whatever, within the agile team, and that they take the initiative then to drive that change within their organization? Because yeah, I'm not able to bring that change for them. So it's again coming back to the empowerment. So if they're part of the problem solving process, they're then more empowered then to basically drive that change. And then I need to make sure then I've got the framework in place that's going to help them to drive that change. So that's yeah, that's a bit how we tackled that on the engineering data management.
Yeah, well, it's excellent, because you obviously, with the example of the GUIs, that you guys are willing to actually work on the GUIs and focus time on the GUIs, kind of shows how you're putting people and process ahead of the tool, and the tool is facilitating your ability to make an interface that makes your people most efficient. We did kind of a similar thing in the medical device company with the engineering change process. We're struggling with people reviewing lots of drawings as part of a change, and the way that the interface had to be designed. We designed a very special interface to be able to make people as efficient as possible in that situation. It's really helped a lot. And so, to your point, Eris is really good, with their technology to be able to do things like that for the users. It's definitely one of the strengths of Innovator, and we've seen that, we saw that over the years as well. So Bill, this conversation's been excellent, but unfortunately it's getting close to time to wrap up. So based on what we discussed today, what are the key takeaways you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, so I think again, just to recap on that, I think it's again for me it's those three pillars which I talked about: people, process, and tools. So I think on the process side, yeah, for me that's the building block, that's the starting point. You need to focus on process kaizen, not only within the functional area, but then also within the horizontal process, and connecting with those upstream and downstream stakeholders to really drive some process improvement, not just within your functional area, but right across the enterprise, or how far you want to put out that value chain. So, and effort and time needs to be put into that. I think then on the people side is to enable that horizontal process improvement. The engineers need to connect. So there needs to be a conversation around. They need to be enabled to speak to their counterparts that they maybe haven't spoken to before, or that they don't know so well, and it comes down to then really having an emotional connection. And of course, that's often a difficult thing for us engineers. We're data driven. We like data, but at the end of the day, you need to understand the problems or the concerns of your upstream or your downstream one, and you need to be able to empathize with that. And if you get to that level, then you really are willing to work together to basically make the process better for both of you. So a big part is around that. And then I think when I look at then from a digitalization leadership point of view, I mentioned then both the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. So the top-down approach really needs to be a compelling long-term vision on where you want to go over a certain time period. It needs to be ambitious, it needs to be aspirational, but also it needs to be inclusive. That's an important one. So, and this vision needs to be constantly and relentlessly communicated. There is no such thing as over communication. All it is under communication. So, and I think then with regards to bottom up initiatives, it's again on the people side. So the focus needs to be on networking and empowerment of the engineering teams, because it's you need to, as I mentioned, I hunt out on a daily basis the opportunities for process Kaizen, and the only way you're going to hunt these out is it's a people business. You need to be connected with the people, and that's again coming back to the one of the pillars of the Toyota way of mutual respect and the continuous improvement. So only if we've got mutual respect for each other that we're going to start to work together, we're going to define a common problem, and then the continuous improvement can come. And then I think at an organizational level, then you need to have that digitalization framework in place that allows then the engineers, when they come with initiatives for change, you're able to support them from whatever, from resources, budget, coaching, advice, to be able to get there, and really celebrating then the fast fail culture, and that's basically that continuous improvement culture. So I think maybe then to wrap up, that they're kind of the key points I think I take away from my journey and what's working for us. And as usual, it's a constantly changing world. I might come back next year and have a completely different story. I don't know, but anyway, that's the current story today. So thanks very much for inviting me, and good to speak to everybody.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure to have you. And I think you touched on leadership, people, process, and tools. And I think you gave a lot of color to Toyota's, what that really means to the Toyota digital transformation. And it sounds like you guys are having some really exciting times as you shift product development forward. I really do appreciate you also talking about the role of ARIS and PLM in that digital transformation. I know a lot of people have questions about that. So I think that was an excellent kind of framework to think about, how those kind of tools actually fit into the bigger scheme of things. So, like I said, this was kind of a full circle conversation for me, and Bill, it was a real pleasure to have this discussion with you, and I hope we can follow up with you in the future. I would love to be able to do that. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It's been great speaking to you. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.